Hi, my name is Cody Ryan Martell. I'm the creative director at Reset Group, and I'm here today to talk with you about writing for the customer's journey. But first, I have a little presentation about myself that I'm going to show you. Let's get right into it. So, about me, again, I recently became the creative director here. I'm self-taught in photography, videography, editing, most media-related things. I studied public relations and psychology at Eastern Michigan University. I still live in Michigan. And I enjoy painting, photography, barbecue chicken wings, to name a few things. And I'm happily married with 2 cats and a dog. And for the more visual people, come on, there we go. A nice, nice collage of the cats, my wife Barbara, our dog, the studio there, some chicken wings, and a photo that I took on my honeymoon. But Reset Group is a manufacturing company that is involved in a bunch of different industries, and it owns and operates LivingSpace sunrooms, porch conversions, Porch Pros, Tonneau, and Conwed. Tonneau and Conwed are very different from the other side. I don't know how we ended up with so many different companies, but it's a very interesting mix to work for, essentially like an agency. So agenda and objectives. Today I really want to talk about why does good writing make a difference, equipping yourself for a strong start, legit just actual writing, and what happens after you're done. So the elements of good writing, I think, can be conveyed pretty simply in this graph. If your brand voice is focused in on an audience and their particular journey, and that is all built on the foundation of a good story, your reader can digest this information pretty easily. Brand voice. Any material that's written or spoken needs to feel the same, like it's coming from that particular brand. If you look at the online presence of Wendy's, it's very different from Cadillac. It's a different tone of voice. You could recognize their tweets. It's how it addresses readers. It might be energetic or laid back. There might be things that a particular brand does not say ever, and that's okay. There's key phrases and slogans, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, I'm loving it. McDonald's, we all recognize it. A good example of brand voice is Starbucks. In their own style guide, you can find the words functional, expressive, and democratic. That first sip feeling. It includes everybody. It's a little fun, but it's functional. You understand what it really means. Everything that they write, every piece of media that they create serves a certain purpose that someone can take information from. It's clear. I recognize it. There we go. Target audience. This is very important to keep in mind for literally anything that you write ever. Because people want to read material that's written for them. If you're not into astrophysics, you're not going to subscribe to a magazine that's all about astrophysics. So write for the person that you need to convey a message to. If you're we're going to talk about an example later of a porch conversions customer. I'm not going to talk about basketball in a blog about porches. It doesn't make any sense. It's not what they're here for, or not what they're there for in that particular case. A trick that I use, I'm sure a lot of people use though, think of the real person as an example for who you're writing for that matches the right demographic. So for LivingSpace sunrooms, for example, I like to think of my Grandpa Dale, because he really is like a pretty normal LivingSpace customer. He meets all the criteria for someone that would typically buy a LivingSpace sunroom. So it's a good example. I wouldn't write a joke in a blog that he wouldn't understand if it's a LivingSpace blog. Whereas Tonneau, totally different audience. Dale jokes would not exist there because it's a different group of people looking for a different product or service. But customer journey, what we're really here for, the journey is the story or typical sequence of events that a customer experiences as they go through the sales cycle of a company. Let's unpack that a little bit because it sounds very dry, and I'm sorry. Every company's journey is different due to what they sell, what they do, what market they exist in, or literally where they are, because the people who buy their stuff might vary depending on locations. So what you write needs to be mindful of where people are at in this journey. Keep in mind, let's see here, do they know what your brand offers already? Do they know what the solution is for the problem they have? Do they even know that they have a problem to begin with? Whoop. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me back it up. Before we go any further, I'll try to explain it a little bit better. If someone's trying to buy something, and they've become part of that particular audience profile, there's usually a certain way that they discover a product or service. Again, we'll go into a real example later, but if someone knows that they have a problem, they're going to search, how do I fix XYZ? Someone wrote a blog all about XYZ, they're going to click on it. That queues up more questions, they ask those questions, and if you can meet them and present your brand at every point, every search that they have, that is the sequence, that is the story that they follow to get to the end point, which is buying your subscription service or whatever it is that your company sells or does. So the LivingSpace customer's journey, for example, usually is a homeowner in their late 40s, early 50s with disposable income. They want to upgrade their house in some way because they're going to be there forever. They've decided they want to make a good investment, but they're not aware that a sunroom is a viable investment for their home. So they start searching for home additions or DIY projects, maybe redoing the kitchen or something like that. Eventually they learn about the sunroom market, and they start looking into more sunroom companies. They've learned more, they're looking at options at this point, so they find LivingSpace sunrooms along the way, and they learn what makes LivingSpace sunrooms different from other sunrooms. At this point, if we've done our job right, they either buy from LivingSpace or they don't buy a sunroom at all, because the quality is different, how we present it is just better. That is the sequence of events that people typically follow. Sometimes they just happen to see a picture online, they look into it, they make a call, that's it. But usually it's people who are trying to do something in particular with their home, and then we meet them along the way at all those points, and then they buy a sunroom. SEO clues, this is pretty valuable. Not everything that you write is going to be SEO driven, but if it is, if there's a certain phrase that you're writing for, that will give you clues as to where they are in their journey. So, for example, to keep LivingSpace on the mind, if someone searches, what is a sunroom, and I'm writing for that SEO topic, they have no clue what a sunroom is, but they've seen pictures. They just know it's a glass room. What the heck is it? What are the details, the structural integrity of it? What's the difference between 3-season and 4-season rooms? This would tell me that they know what a screen room is, and they know that there's something better out there, but they don't really get it, and they may have seen the phrases 3-season, 4-season, and gone, okay, what does it mean? Because a lot of different companies use those terms very loosely, but they're looking into the details at this point. How thermal efficient is a sunroom? When someone searches this, LivingSpace, the people who work here, we know that this person has looked into the market and they've done a lot of research on pain points that people often encounter. So I know that if I'm writing for this person who has searched this, they're pretty educated already, and I need to show them our math. How does it really work? Rather than just say, hey, sunrooms are cool. It's a different person that you're writing for at this point because they're way farther in the story. Let's keep going. Storytelling. It's incredibly important. People want to read something that is digestible and relatable and can retain their attention. If you've searched for anything on the internet ever, if what you're clicking on doesn't retain your attention right away, people don't want to read it. You will click away. I click away. No one wants to read something that's incredibly boring. Things that don't have stories are hard to read, such as washing machine repair manuals, directions to an airport, federal tax codes. But stories are not always found in everything. They shouldn't always be there. White papers, for example, are just lots of raw information, extremely factual. It's not necessarily supposed to entertain you in some way. Corporate memos, while there may be a story behind it, it's really just, here's information, please learn it. Instructions are a sequence of events like a story, but there's no stakes. Nothing's really being solved besides, the instructions. That's basically it. The new live-action Disney remakes, I'm not a fan of. There's no real story there because they've killed it. Remember who the main character is. This sounds a little redundant at this point because we're talking about stories, but it is extremely important that you write something with the main character in mind. Your story should make sense to the person that it's written for. That is easily done if they are treated as the main character. The character is getting out to solve some kind of problem. Your company is the solution to that problem. So if you're writing about sunrooms, again, for example, you need to remember who it is that you're writing for and that they are the person in the story, not you or I, not the person delivering the information. They want it. So again, if your brand voice is focused on an audience's journey, like them in particular, and that's all built on the foundation of a good story, you've got good writing. Someone can grab onto it and actually take something away from it particularly the thing that your company wants them to take away from it. So to get started, you need your voice, main character, story, goal. Those are all found within things such as the brand style guide, like we talked about earlier, the audience profile. Some companies have them written down, some don't. But this is really just like a single sheet, like a description. Who is this person? What do they do? What kind of interests do they have? We described it earlier for LivingSpace. Again, it's late 40s, early 50s, disposable income. They own their home. They just want something nice. The audience journey, that's the sequence of events. We've talked about that a bunch at this point. And then the writing request. What is being asked of you? Is this a blog? Is it a press release? What's the point? You have to have something agreed upon before you can actually get started. Otherwise, you're just kind of writing aimlessly. Maybe you'll make something, maybe you won't. So things to keep in mind while you're doing this is, again, what is the topic? Is it SEO driven? Not everything is. You don't always get those clues that we talked about earlier. Who is it for? When is it needed by? Do you have to hurry? Do you need to research? How much time do you have to actually work on those things? What is the ideal outcome? What is the CTA at the end of this blog? You have to have that end goal for them to reach. And what reference material is to be used and how? Because sometimes you have to write a particular blog that needs this particular video to be included at some point for a very certain reason. Or sometimes you don't. That's the name of the game. It's always different. So if you want to break it down to this, like the basics, who, what, when, where, why, and how, audience profile, that'll tell you exactly who you're writing for. The writing request, that'll tell you exactly what you're writing. When does it take place on that timeline? The customer's journey can tell you that. The story is where in their lives is this happening? Is it talking about their home or their job or whatever? Why are you writing this? That's the ideal outcome. You want this person to click on the thing at the bottom of the article. You want them to take away this information and call that person, whatever. How? That's the brand style guide. You're going to sound just like this. You're going to say these words. It needs to feel this way. That's how you're going to do it. So now you can start writing. You have everything that you need to actually begin. So we're going to plot out your writing points. We're going to start writing, and then we're not going to stop writing. Plain and simple. So plotting it out. Take apart your story into its key elements. See what kind of flow that there is. You need to start thinking about where you're going to put certain paragraphs, how you're going to connect them. Determine where your reader is so you can have your starting point. Again, that's the customer journey. Determine where in the story does it end. The whole sales journey for LivingSpace, again, is they buy a sunroom, but not every article is going to end with buy a sunroom. Usually it's queuing up another question that they can look into, and then that leads them along the way. You have to have a realistic stopping point because no one press release is going to sell something. It needs to be part of an entire experience cohesively. Write out those plot points, and then you can determine what happens in the middle. So plotting it out, I'm just going to rail through this. Our topic, porch conversions, is good for high pollen areas. This is a hypothetical example. It's a real blog, but this is what we're going to work with. Our SEO is patio for a pollen season. Block pollen from porch. Cost of sunroom. At this point, with that topic and those bits of SEO, I know that this person that I'm writing for, we have a homeowner who doesn't like pollen. They loosely understand that screen porches won't really cut it, and they're weary of the cost of sunrooms. They've done a little bit of research, but not a ton. So I'm going to burn through these and then explain them. It'll make more sense this way, I promise. Our plot points. Set the scene. Who are they and what are they doing? Where's the story start? It's going to be the home. Relate to them by talking about the woes of screen porches this season, the pollen season. Excuse me. Address the problem directly and offer a counterpoint. Talk about the negatives of sunrooms, the expensive solution that they probably assume that they're going to have to buy into. And then we introduce our next points. There we go. Counter their counter. Porch conversions. Explain how it exceeds their expectations. Use content to verify. Testimonials are great, but don't exaggerate the truth. Don't ever lie. Don't ever lie in anything that you write. It needs to be factual. And testimonials are very valuable. It just makes everything sell better. Offer next steps now that you've learned how to solve their problem. So you might be thinking, that's just one huge sequence of events. How did you really just rattle that off? Granted, yes, I wrote this ahead of time, but it doesn't really feel easy to do that, to just plow through an entire story. So let's reset it. That's not really how you should write it. to make it easy on yourself. We know the beginning. Relate to them by talking about the woes of pollen season and screen porches. I know that they have a problem here, so that's where we're going to grab their attention. Relate to them right away. You don't like pollen. It sucks. Screen porches aren't that great. I know where I want them to end, and that is explaining how it exceeds those expectations. Technically, the ending is read this other blog, but you can't just automatically jump to that point, so you justify it with the setting those expectations and then breaking them down, blowing them away. So now I have my beginning, I have my end. What is that middle point? That is talking about the negatives of sunrooms, the expensive solutions they probably assume, because that cues up the ending very well. So once I have those 3 points, it's easy to really flesh out that beginning, the 1/3 mark, we have our middle, we go into our ending, and then it finishes off with a nice CTA. That's how you put those points together, because you have your story, you know where you're sending them, you know where they're starting. Don't think you have to write the whole thing and sequentially. It's really hard. So begin. You haven't read a single paragraph at this point, but you've laid out all of your points that you're going to get to. So just start knocking them out. You can easily create at least a paragraph or more per plot point. This should be true, or something is just extremely simple and maybe it is just one paragraph or a sentence. That's possible. But usually a point can be 2 paragraphs to cue it up and then close it out, relate to the next one. Make a few. I like to write out like a single paragraph 3 or 4 times so I can pick the best parts of each. Usually you don't just knock it out of the park one after the other, so it's good to take the best of different pieces that you've created. And as you're writing those different versions, don't stop the stream of consciousness, just keep going. Finish the thought, because if you keep starting a paragraph and then teeters off, start a paragraph and then teeters off, you're never going to finish your thought, you're never going to have a cohesive paragraph to work with, to compare against others. So even if what you're saying sounds a little weird, just finish the thought. Plow through it, don't stop. The worst thing you can do is stare at a blank page. I'm sure you've done this before. I've done it before. It feels defeating. And if you feel like you just can't even start because you don't know where to begin, you've done something wrong. Go back to your foundational information that curates the entire story. Making sure the recorder's still on, sorry. Refine your work. Odds are there's some stuff you're gonna have to cut out, such as the stuff I'm about to tell you. Look for redundant word combos, and also very blah blah blah. There's better words than very tired, such as exhausted. Cut out fluff, you don't need it. Cut out phrases or whole sentences that don't add value. If you have 2 sentences in a row that don't really impact what they're understanding or offer something new, you probably don't need it, unless maybe you just hit them over the head with a lot of facts and you need to break it up with a joke or just something more casual. That makes sense, but generally speaking, people like to get to the point when they're reading articles online or a press release, the most straightforward thing of all. Those things are called fluff. Cut out fluff. Of course, my iPad's not working again. There we go. Rephrase any descriptions that are not precise. If you're not describing something super accurately, redo it, because someone else from a different company, they're going to describe it accurately and they're not going to buy your product, they're going to buy theirs. You need to be precise, but again, don't ever lie about anything. If a single point took 3 paragraphs, it probably shouldn't. It's easy to ramble, so just kind of cut down on what you're saying. Maybe you repeated something a couple of times and it feels like a separate thought, but it's not. Condense what you're saying. And then check yourself. Go back to the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and actually be honest and say, did I do these things? Did you write for the correct audience? Maybe your company has a couple of them and you went off the rails and wrote for the wrong one. What are you writing? Did you write about the actual topic, or did you get excited and go farther than you were supposed to? Did you write correctly for the customer's journey? I accidentally repeated myself in this line and kind of said the same thing about customer journey, but it's important, so don't ignore it. Does it finish with the right goal in mind? I've seen an astonishing amount of articles that don't actually send you anywhere or give you anything to do or even think about. Don't write like that. Give them something to do next, even if it's as simple as, hey, call our customer service line. That's still something. Don't leave them hanging. They came to your article for a reason. Does it sound like your brand's voice? It's easy to kind of inject yourself into your writing too much. Some here and there is okay, but if your company's very serious and you're a very funny person, don't write so many jokes. Now you can start reviewing. Get the right input from the right people, let it breathe, Take a look at what you wrote, detailed and from afar, how it fits into the whole writing ecosystem that your company has probably created by this point. So getting feedback, people who helped create the assignment to begin with, you should talk with them because they have a very specific vision in mind, most likely, of what needs to be conveyed in your story. And then people that are impacted by what you're writing should also weigh in. If it's something factual like architecture and engineering, you should probably make sure the architecture and engineering department actually agree with what you're saying so that you're not accidentally lying or overselling something. So ask people to take a peek. Honestly, most people don't, or they just skim your work, and that's okay because it's still an extra pair of eyes at the end of the day. Point out specific things that need attention. If you know that a particular paragraph is a little weak compared to the rest, let them know so that they can focus on that, rather than hoping that they kind of come across it and have something to say. Not everyone will love it, and that's okay too. Some people just disagree on style, and to the point where it doesn't even fall on the brand guideline. Maybe some people just don't like fancy adjectives, even though it fits. It's okay if someone simply disagrees with your writing, because it's an opinion. It's okay to disagree. Odds are there'll be a lot of edits, but discerning fact from opinion is very important. We'll talk about that next. Processing that feedback is what you have to do with that information. And you can run through this filter. Is their input coming from fact or opinion? Is it simply their preference and their style and it doesn't matter? Okay, maybe address the style guide or the AP style to see if it actually matters. Because if the brand guide agrees with you or them, go with the correct party. Don't just assume you're right. If it's coming from a fact, though, then that's a fact. Are they suggesting something that goes against the initial writing request? Some people don't really get what it is that you're writing or trying to achieve, even though they just read your article. So if they're suggesting that you add this whole other chunk of information that is actually going to be counterproductive to your goal, then don't do it. Or maybe that's going to queue up another writing assignment that you can take on yourself. If yes, is it still worth it? Again, is it something worth pursuing on a different project? If something is critically wrong, what exactly would fix that issue? If someone tells you that, like, that's bad, that's not gonna work, and that's all they got, okay, how? Because clearly you didn't know, and that's fine. They have to communicate with you, and if they're not, tell them that, because they might think that you actually know the answer. Just really, this whole slide is all about, hey, talk to people. It's okay to ask questions. So what you wrote, did it actually get to the point? That's the real final filter, the final test. Did it actually convey the message you're supposed to? It should be as simple as yes or no. If it did, cool. You're basically done. You can start to jazz it up, put it online, and then review it again in a year or something. If it didn't, go back to your who, what, when, where, why, and how, and see where you went wrong. And then bump it up. If you've actually created this piece, you can start to add some stuff if it makes sense, because good writing doesn't need anything else to be good or convey a message, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have pretty graphics or videos or links to other articles. Those are all good things. So that, again, that's graphics, photography, links to other articles. They give you more domain authority. Social is always good to connect things. A blog goes great if it's put on Facebook, and then like a press release should definitely be on LinkedIn. Maybe there's extra SEO phrases that were looked over that will actually help it as well. It doesn't hurt to come up in more searches, so plug it in if you got them. After that, let it breathe. It's good to reread your work after some time has passed, because maybe you just weren't thinking about a certain topic, or maybe you learned something new about your company a week later and it actually affected what you were doing. So it's okay to go back and change things. Once it's done, it's not done forever. It's just done for now. And then keep up on trends, because maybe you wrote a blog and then in 6 months you notice something about the way that interior design is changing the way that they use the color green, and it makes sense to update this blog you wrote about teals. I don't know, I'm just riffing an example, but it's okay to edit your work based on the changing times. Really, that's what you should be doing at all times. So your ultimate takeaways: remember who you are writing for, who you work for, and why you're writing that thing in the first place. Because if you lose sight of any of those, you're going to go off the rails one way or another, and it's just not going to turn out that good. But if you have all of your ducks in a row, if you have all this information, it's agreed upon, it makes sense, you have the timeline, you have your plot points, everything is going to go smoother, and you can just crank out work. You can be an all-star. That's all I got for you. Goodbye.